Jolene, did you want to take the floor for maybe 5 minutes and share? And I think Jolene might have a small presentation that she's going to share her screen and show everyone as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so first off, I just want to say thank you for providing this opportunity to talk about what it is to make a living as an artist. I think it's a super important thing to like break down the walls and sort of some of the conceptions of what it is, right? The idea of the starving artist and sort of romanticizing the idea of not being successful. I think it's the only career I can think of where we romanticize the idea of not really making it. I can't think of another industry that sort of makes that an appealing thing. So yeah, I basically broke this down. I just wanted to start talking a little bit about myself, my history, and how I started as an artist. And then I do just have a couple minutes of slideshows that I'll just let run through while I talk a bit more about sort of my process and my creative practice a little bit. So I've always been an artist. I was a kid in high school. I was locked up in my room, you know, working on sketchbooks and new ideas. I did go to the Emily Carr University and graduated in 2009. And I've been making a living now as an artist for about 9 years, just full-time, self-employed. So yeah, after I did art school, it was a wonderful opportunity for me to sort of look really in depth at the art world and see where I fit. But from there, I took the opportunity to see more of the world. I traveled and lived abroad for a little while. And after some time, I ended up back in Kelowna and got a job at Opus. So I'll say that like my time spent at Opus is probably the best education I got in art material, product, how to actually use these products and what's, you know, how you can chemically work with them. But also it was like the catalyst to really becoming involved in my community. So it's where I met so many people who were making art, but as well as people who were sort of creating opportunities for artists in the Okanagan. So I really started to embed myself in my community in that way, make art, show my work, try to figure myself out. But when I was done at Opus, I decided to also go back to school and get a diploma for computer graphic design. At that point, I didn't see it as a viable path to make art that was my own art and sort of sell it. I didn't know how that could work, but I could sort of conceptualize being a graphic designer and sort of being in visual communication. So that's still a sort of creative path, but it made more sense to me as sort of a linear path that you can get into in the creative world. So I had the opportunity to work as a graphic designer in a local print shop. And that's sort of actually where I got to see a lot more of the behind the scenes of a small business. So it was an opportunity for me to sort of pull a lot of information about marketing and, you know, customer relations and things like that, and bring that into my own business. So it sort of, you know, I had a few serendipitous experiences. I was showing work at the Bean Scene. If you know, they locally do rotational shows. So I was hanging work at the Capri Bean Scene, and literally as I was hanging the show, I sold 2 pieces before I could even get them on the wall. And it was this thing that sort of clicked in my head, and I was like, well, what the heck? There seems to be demand for this. Instead of spending 8 hours a day working on somebody else's business, what if I went ahead and sort of like focused on my business? I was a frugal enough person that I had a little bit of a nest egg, and I was able to leave my job when I was 24 years old. And I started with graphic design. So I was doing freelance graphic design and starting to get more and more studio time in. So yeah, I basically have been able over the years to leave graphic design behind. It's something that for me, I actually really struggle with the sitting in front of the computer part. I really was missing the tactile nature of making things with my hands. And that's something that I've always had to come back to in my creative practice, sort of like, what is the language that I speak best? And for me, it feels like oil painting is the language that I can speak. So actually that sort of works. I'm just gonna try this screen share thing and see if I can do this. And I just was gonna try to show you guys, I was just gonna put on this little slideshow. So this is some of my work over the last decade. So this work here is from when I was in university. The reason I wanted to show this and sort of talk about it a little bit is because I feel like it shows sort of some of these threads that are carried through a creative practice. So this little robot character is something that showed up a decade ago. He sort of disappeared for a while and he's come back up in my work. I always sort of have this theme of nature that runs through my work because that's what I get a lot of inspiration from, is being out in the world and just being enamored of the colors in the sky and things like that. And trying to bring that sort of inspiration into the studio and translate that to paint. So yeah, I just wanted to share sort of some of these pieces and some of these themes. Part of my creative practice is trying new things as well, and looking at the world differently. So something that I've done recently, I think it's really valuable to keep learning and trying new things as an artist. So I've gone back to school and started learning printmaking, lithography specifically. I stopped doing that about a year ago when COVID hit. I sort of stopped doing everything, and I've been working from my home-based studio. But yeah, I think that it's interesting to sort of see over a career, over sort of a duration of time spent making things, you see these ideas that sort of come and go. And so, yeah, I just think it's important to remain authentic to what you're interested in and just be honest about what you're really drawn to. Pay attention to those things that keep coming up in your sketchbooks or notes that you keep taking. Pay attention to those things and give yourself a moment to sort of refine it. Keep coming back to it and refine that idea. So yeah, that's sort of my little ditty, all that I really wanted to share about myself. And hopefully that sort of gives us a jumping point for some of the questions that we'll get into today as well.
Awesome, and thank you. And just to confirm, so you mostly work with painting, but I do know you have print as well, and I saw some
other merchandise.
Yeah, some other stuff in there. Can you just confirm the different forms or mediums that your work takes?
Absolutely. So a majority of what I do is I try to make original work, and I try to make and sell original work and make it so that I'm able to spend most of my time painting, because that's where my passion lies. That's what I'm best at. So I try to make paintings that vary in size and price point so that it is something that's anybody can purchase. But I also I have over the years branched into doing, just paper prints, greeting cards. I do some little necklaces. I've played with t-shirts and apparel and things like that. I enjoy these side projects for, they get my brain thinking differently about imagery and visual communication again, especially moving into apparel. I was learning a lot about how to simplify designs for screen printing. So yeah, just thinking about how to build an image differently, I think has been really good for creative growth. When you try these things that you're not sure how they'll turn out,
like your head.
It'll influence your other work, I think.
Looks
cool.
Interesting.
Thank you. And I, just as you started talking about those other things, I know we're going to come back to you specifically with questions around licensing, if that's something. Let's move to
what it's pairing with.
Sheldon.
Could we get Janice Hopkins to mute their mic?
Yes.
Okay, I think they're still up on the screen, it looks like in front of me. I'm going to try to share my screen here real quick, and I'll walk you through my website here. So just bear with me for a second. So just going to take a second to get into my Safari.
No worries.
Doesn't seem to be popping up at the moment, even though I have it open.
Should we go to Anetta? Oh, you got it?
There we go.
Cool.
Okay. Just gotta learn the controls here. So I think just for a brief introduction, White Huskelhalt in Chai Squeeze, Sheldon Lewis, Kintel Inkamapalux, Kintel Sinclahutan, Incha Siuch, Incha Sinaikst. Hello, my name is Sheldon Lewis. I come from the Okanagan Indian Band, which is located at the north end of Okanagan Lake. I live currently at the place where my family has grown up, and at Sinclairhouten, which means the place where the grizzly bear killed them. I grew up here in the Okanagan my entire life. You know, I guess my art practice started as early as 6 years old. And I share this story quite often because it really speaks to, I think, the time and commitment that I've put into getting to where I am today. Always surrounded by artists. My father was an artist and worked very closely with my other relative, Barb Marchand, through the 70s and 80s. And so I grew up around the art practice, you know, number of family members. At 6 years old, here in our community on the Okanagan Indian Band, all of our community artists who were living here at the time put on a community art exhibit at our local community hall. And at 6 years old, you know, I just was amazed that all these people were coming together and just showing the work that they love doing. And we went home that day and I told my dad, I said, that's what I'm going to do. And, you know, who believes a 6-year-old kid, you know, at that time, it's, you know, you got ideas of grandeur of policemen, firemen, you know. So he's like, okay, well, you know, obviously encouraged me my whole life. And you know, I went home and at 6 years old, drew up all these pictures and put price tags on them. And anytime family members would come over, I was canvassing them to buy some art of mine at that age. And, you know, it was in me ever since then. And so, you know, I went through my years, you know, growing up and just learning from my dad, learning from Barb, learning from basically visually watching, and then also my dad giving me the ability to always be hands-on. You know, my dad was a multimedia artist, carver, you know, leather work, anything he could get his hands on, he pretty much did. So I had a very well-rounded, I guess, experience in different art materials and different styles. I think at about 11, 11 was the first time I actually sold a piece of artwork. My community came to me at the time and said, you know, we want a logo. And so I was recommended at 11 years old to do this logo for our Indian band, one of the departments in the Indian band. And at that point, you know, I think I made $300 for a 8x11 ink drawing at the time. And I was like, whoa, okay, you know. And then from that point forward, it was word of mouth. Everybody was like, well, Sheldon's doing his work now and selling it. So community just kept coming at me, you know, and asking for different pieces for logos, letterheads, a lot of t-shirt designs for our youth celebrations. And early on, I always knew that's what I wanted to do, but I wasn't exactly sure how do I go about creating that practice. And it, in essence, built by word of mouth of people just coming and asking and saying, well, you know, he can do this, let's ask him. And it just grew, you know. And even at that point, my father was kind of, you know, maybe you should look at getting a career now. I'm like, well, no, this is what my career is going to be. Like, you know, he still wasn't 100% sold on the idea that you can be a career artist. You know, like Jolene said, you know, that idea of starving artist, you know, it was very prevalent, you know. And I mean, even much more, I think, in the Indigenous community at the time, you know, in the 70s, we had, you know, the Daphne Ojics, the, you know, other group of 7, you know, that were really making a name. But it was hard work, you know, and my dad just wasn't sure. But I think at the age of, early 20s, I had UBC Okanagan reach out to me and asked to commission me to do a carving for UBC for their convocational mace. It gets carried every year during the graduation ceremonies. It actually leads the entire ceremony. At that point, Bill Reed and I forget the other fellow's name, had carved one for UBC Vancouver, and they were shipping that up every year to carry here in the Okanagan, and they felt, this is Okanagan, we need a carved piece to represent us. So myself and my cousin Justin Turbasket had created this ceremonial mace, and that day I came home, I turned them down 3 times before I even said, okay, I'll come and meet you. And they talked me into it, and I took the job. And that day I came home and showed my father the size of the check that I had made for that. And, his eyes were like donut holes. And I think in that moment, he himself realized, along with me, I was like, whoa, I can actually make a living at this. I can make as much, if not more, than what I'm making at my day job now. And so that was the beginning of me really putting, I think, the majority of myself into that work. And time just went on where I was gaining a lot of attention just through word of mouth. Now, as I was going to show some of my different works here. This will work, This here was, I think, the most pivotal piece that really put me out there into the public. A few years later, after working for UBC Okanagan, I was approached by the Okanagan Nation Alliance in partnership with, I believe it was Interior Health at the time, and they were wanting to indigenize hospital spaces. And so 3 Okanagan artists, Indigenous artists, were chosen to have art publicly commissioned and installed into Vernon, Kelowna, and Penticton Hospital. This piece here in front of you guys was the piece I created for the Kelowna General Hospital, and it actually sits in the foyer when you walk into the hospital now. But this piece here was, I look back on it, and it's the very defining moment of where I actually created something that was mine, I think, that was very unique and is very identifiable to me. And if we look at a lot of my artwork today now, people who do know my artwork will recognize it simply just by the look of it and by the palette of it, and they can tell, oh, that's one of Sheldon's works. And so, this here too is another piece that was done for First Nations Health Authority. Same thing. People who know me working in First Nations Health knew that I was an artist and said, hey, look, can you create us some work? And so, a lot of these things, this one was something I just created to, a lot of people have been unable to essentially afford an original piece. The pricing of original pieces for some people are a little too high. So from time to time, I'll create some simpler imagery, and I'll raffle it off just so the opportunity for community members to win a piece of artwork. And actually, one of my relatives actually was able to attain this one for $5. She bought one ticket and won. And so, moving through, same with Jolene, I've always worked with a much simpler style to define some of my works. Now this here is a mural piece. Now this is where I've learned that creating just original works it's not going to just pay the bills all the time, because again, the fact that not everyone can afford an original piece. And so I've learned that through my training in 2001, I was trained under Michelle Lockery in Vernon as a mural artist. And, she also showed me how to create youth arts projects where we come in and we mentor youth. And in essence, we create a job for ourselves as an artist, but also what we do is we come in and we mentor and teach skills, these sorts of skills to the youth, inspiring artists. So that way they can come in and also learn to do what we do, and not only learn how to paint and create art, but we teach them, similar to what we're talking about today, the different ways by which we've come to be professional artists. And so coming in and doing youth projects like this one was done with Kelowna Secondary School, where I designed the mural and then worked alongside the Honors 12 arts class to create, I believe this is 8 by 24 feet long, piece. Now this was funded through UBC, Okanagan, the Kelowna Friendship Center, and here it's on exhibit at UBC Okanagan because they put up some funding, so they were able to exhibit it. Now this is starting to get in. This is me and my partner Chisekwa, also coming in and doing the gallery exhibit thing. Not always guaranteed to be a moneymaker, but certainly gets your name out there. And you know, once I kind of shied away from the gallery scene for quite some time, and then people were really like, look, you know, you really need to come and show your art in these types of spaces. And so my first show was through Vernon Public Art Gallery. We've been working with them for 6 or 7 years now, where we created an arts collective. And every year we're offered a space for emerging artists. And since coming into those spaces, I've been asked to do solo shows. This one actually came about from a solo show I did in Vernon Public Art Gallery. And this show, I partnered with my girlfriend, and we took this up into Castlegar and shared there. As well, these pieces showed with the Alternator as part of Michelle Lockery's group, the Root Blue group. And the very last day of that show at the Alternator, in the hallway gallery space there, the entire show of mine sold out. Every piece was spoken for. And, you know, it started really just snowballing. People mentioning my name, you know, obviously probably seeing my art within different homes, different spaces. And so
You're at, oh, I was gonna say, you've got work. I've seen it at the hospital. It's at the airport right now.
yes.
Yeah.
What I got right, my my work that's in the gallery space in Kelowna. Oh, I'm trying to figure out how to get out of this quickly here. So, you know, I moved from essentially doing commission work by word of mouth to coming in and doing a lot of different projects. And then based upon, you know, the projects that I've done, I've been able to get recognized, and I think I've had 2 or 3 different spots on global news, numerous publications and newspapers, and I mean, honestly, it's never been me marketing myself out there. It's just me creating art and people recognizing it. I've been very fortunate in that sense, where I haven't necessarily had to do the marketing part of the work. I've just been able to create work and by word of mouth have it get out there. The recent one, you know, I mean, we just had one with the Alternator with the vinyl lino cuts in the window space.
Yeah.
Based upon that show at the Alternator, the Kelowna Gallery reached out to me and was like, look, hey, we got this airport space. We would love if you would come and show here. And I spent a number of years, again, turning that opportunity down. Was like, no, that's not really, I'm not really into that at the moment. You know, I'm doing my own thing. And you know, through my work, as I'm a political representative for Okanagan Indian Band, the chief and council, I was traveling to Ottawa for political meetings one week, and I came across David Wilson's work hanging in the airport space, and I was like, wow, that's actually a really amazing space. You know, a lot of foot traffic, people coming from all over the world into Kelowna, and I was like, you know what, yeah, let's take that opportunity. And luckily so. I mean, it was tough. COVID came in and we had to maneuver with COVID, but we've made it work. It's been extended from a 6-month exhibit to a year-long exhibit. And in showing there, we made #1 art space and exhibit in the world for airport spaces. You know, I honestly couldn't have asked for better publicity than having Canada Air post this news article about the art in that space. And you know, I've gone from being just a young boy on the reserve who loved creating artwork to being recognized in these certain ways. And I think the biggest part, I asked my partner prior to this, I was like, I don't understand why I've been successful as I've been. I don't know. And she's like, your confidence in your work and your confidence in yourself. She said, when you go and speak in different spaces and you speak of your art and show your work, she's like, you're very confident in how you carry yourself. And she's like, it really resonates through everything you do, working with the youth, coming in and using the art as an educational tool to the public. And so there really wasn't a map on how to do this. I never went to art school. I contemplated it, but I had a number of artist colleagues at the time who were in Emily Carr, who were in Santa Fe, New Mexico, at the Institute of American Indian Arts, and a lot of them were like, why are you even gonna thinking of going to school for art? And I'm like, well, I like the letters behind my name, I guess. And they were like, well, looking at your work, they're like, there's probably not much you're gonna learn from going to school. So they're like, I think you're probably good to just continue on. And so, taking heed from my colleagues and some of my peers that were in those spaces, I said, okay, well, I'll just continue on doing what I'm doing. And, thankfully I've been able to reach that point now where I think the last 7 years, 6-7 years, I've hit that average for, a Canadian artist, and we're seeing a very uptick in the amount of salary that First Nations artists are now making. In 2016, when I think Canada Council did their census, First Nations artists were only making 68 cents on the dollar, averaging about 24,000 a year in 2016, where now we're seeing First Nations artists, the average is $8,000 more than what a Canadian artist makes now in BC. And so, I'm at a very opportune moment in Canadian and Indigenous art where I'm able to tap into that. And like I said, with the support of the Alternator Gallery, Kelowna Gallery, these different spaces and different news outlets, they're the ones, obviously I've done the work myself to get there, but I think without them seeing me in the light they see me, I think I don't know if I'd be where I'm at today.
Yeah, don't take any of the credit away from yourself, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I am a little conscious of time, so if we could move on to Anetta for now, and then I definitely have some questions for you as well, Sheldon.
Okay. If I can just get out of this stop share. There we go.
Awesome.
And for everyone who wanted to, I put the link to the website, I think, in the chat, or maybe not. I'll put it up right now.
Awesome. There we go.
Oops, that just went to you. Sorry. We'll send it to everyone.
All right. And Anetta.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anetta. I'm originally from Poland, and I came to Canada in 1990. First, I have to learn English, but the art, it was always international language. So it doesn't matter if it's North American or European, it's international. So we can communicate through art. So that was my first interaction with Canada to compare the Canadian art and North American art to European art. So after when I finished my ESL classes, I passed the TOEFL exam, and I continue my education in art at Alberta College of Art in Calgary. And my first year was foundation. I was planning to take a textile program, but then first year I had to complete my first year. I had to take one additional elective, and it was ceramic. And that was my first interaction with clay. And it was the love from the first touch, I call. It's not always mutual. Sometimes I cried in front of the kiln when I opened, so it's not always successful, but the journey is incredible. So after when I graduated from Alberta College of Art, I continue to share the studio. I couldn't afford to set up my own studio. So I was going to Mount Pleasant and I met incredible people there. And we were sharing the passion, the information we got. Then I was fortunate when I applied to Banff residency program in 2002. So that was the eyes opener. It was fantastic, 10 weeks. It is ceramist heaven when you have access to all the kilns and the chemicals to make your own glazes. And this set up the journey, the way I wanted to set up my studio as well. So I did few residencies in Greece, and right now, when we moved to Okanagan, I decided to set up my own studio and start a residency program here. Of course, everything is on hold now because of the COVID restrictions, but hopefully at the studio we will hold the workshop by Alberto Bustos. I will put the link on the chat, so later you can check the dates when he's coming. And I'd like to introduce you to the studio. So it is the Turiya the Fourth. That's the name for the studio, which in Sanskrit, it means fourth. So that's why it's Turiya the Fourth. And it means fourth elements: earth, water, and fire. Earth, water, fire, and soil. So here we have, I will change the camera so you can see the studio. We are sharing with our students here. So hopefully in the future, there will be a residency program as well. So we have 6 wheels. We have a little gallery as well. We have a glazing room. So here we have the little gallery. So we exhibit our students' work and my work as well. I hope that I'm not going too fast, so you can see the setup. And also we have young people coming to the studio and working with clay and also drawing. So now I'd like to go to the the glazing room.
I'm interested hearing too, Anetta, about how you built up to having your studio. I know you shared some of this story with me earlier.
That's right.
So I'm excited to hear, for you to share it with everyone else.
So of course at school I learned how to work with clay, but there wasn't so many points how to build the business, how to apply for grants, how to apply to have the show at the galleries, and also how to set up the studio. So in 2017, I was fortunate to be a participant of the Community Future Program, where it was 3 months program, very intense. The first month, it was management. They taught us how to manage the studio or any business. The second month, it was marketing. And the third month, it was bookkeeping. Very intensive. The people who work in Community Future very helpful. We're still in touch after 4 years of participating in the program. And that was fabulous. So I would recommend to everyone who knows how to do art also to learn the business aspect of how to run the studio, or how to sell, how to market your pieces. That's very important.
Awesome. Oh, Jolene?
I know, I muted myself, I'm sorry. I just wanted to chime in on that, sort of how beautiful and bountiful the opportunities are within having a creative career. I'm sure that you will agree with me as artists. I've always really struggled with a traditional job and sort of like needing to be here and produce, you know, or like be good for customers at this point in time. I've always desired, I guess, more flexibility in my schedule. And to me, that's sort of been like the most valuable part of having this career, is the freedom and flexibility within it. I think we wanted to talk just specifically about how some of us have pivoted during COVID as well.
Yeah.
It's been really cool. I think that artists, I don't know what it is, but so many of us are teachers, and so many of us really want to encourage that creative thing in youth. And I think it's because, I mean, I think we see a lot of adults that maybe have lost that sense of play or creativity, that sense of joy that we get from our creative practice. Maybe people have lost that over the years. So we try to instill that in youth. So for me, teaching has always been something that's been so important to me, and just sharing how to make things and how to develop a practice. But that sort of ground right to a halt for me when COVID started. I've had a really interesting pivot where I've been focusing a lot more on my social media, and that for me has opened up opportunities that have been beyond sort of my community, which has been really cool. Like I've been shipping work all across Canada and all across the States over this last year, and I've been reaching people that I never would have if I had sort of, you know, maintained these this sort of community barrier that I was working within. So yeah, I don't know. I didn't know. I wonder if Sheldon or Anetta have input on how they've sort of shifted what they've been doing since COVID as well.
Yeah, it's been difficult. I mean, a lot of my last year's work has been put on hold because a lot of it were youth mentoring projects. I was lucky enough that as COVID started and I had to start putting some of them on hold, I don't know how, but I started getting a lot more commission work started coming in. And oh, sorry, my screen just I lost you for a sec there, sorry. And yeah, you know, I've started going into illustrating now, digital illustrations now for a number of different people, and got a rather large contract to First Nations Health Authority, where I'm helping now create educational material for educating on health aspects within Indigenous communities. And so again, word of mouth for me, you know, people just kind of found their way to me, and I've been lucky enough that the commissions now, where I can create in isolation now at home. I'm exploring the idea of using Zoom now. I've got a couple workshops coming up where we're not sure how they're going to go, but we're going to test out Zoom and try to teach some of my youth within the nation here over Zoom in a week or so. We just went through a First Nations People Cultural Council grant where very different, but I had to learn my traditional hand poke tattoo practice remotely over Zoom, and had to physically tattoo myself and have my mentor, who's in Nova Scotia, watch me over Zoom and give direction to me over Zoom on how to do this work. And so even in that sense, that was a very trying experience on how to learn.
So you had to give yourself a tattoo over Zoom?
Yeah. Well, we each of us as practitioners, our first tattoo had to be on ourselves. And so what we did was we just essentially set up Zoom and sat in our rooms and faced the screen down. All three of us did our leg because that's the easiest place to do. And so we tattooed ourselves, and From there, we did 5 other tattoos, and again, our mentor Dion Kazaz he's in Clapham from the Thompson area up in Merritt, but he's teaching at University of Nova Scotia, and so again, he remotely chimed in every time we did a tattoo and watched and gave direction, and it was difficult to say the least, but you know, again, trying to learn this new platform, Zoom, and that we're so accustomed to now, it seems this year, but trying to again diversify the different tools in which we reach out to the world has been another way to diversify, I guess.
Yeah, fluidity, like it seems like it's so important to being able to successfully pivot. Anetta, how has COVID impacted your practice?
Yeah, very much so. I opened the studio last year in January, at the end of January. Actually, we're celebrating 1-year anniversary. So I had to close the studio for March, April, and May. So I was producing my work, artwork. And then we reopened the studio in May, and we started advertise on the website about the classes. And in September, we did the open studio. So the local community respond fantastically. Like the studio start flying almost. And we had so many requests for classes on the pottery wheel, on hand building, that we have to extend for 2 days, for example, for pottery wheel classes. And then we have a lot of commissions for functional stuff as well, like selling cups or mugs, bowls, all the functional pottery. So we maintain getting busier and busier. But when the restriction will loosen, then we want to pursue for the residency program, so people can come from around the world and share their knowledge, learn something from us. So that's our goal.
Yeah. Awesome. Like, I know COVID has really impacted us at the gallery in terms of people who are drawn to the arts and interested in engaging either as volunteers or have maybe discovered or rediscovered an artistic practice of theirs, or picked up a pen for the first time in a while. And so yeah, the capacity, there's people who are really interested in the arts right now. So I feel like for a lot of artists, it's a busier time of either just learning their practice or wanting to be involved in different ways. So yeah, but having those skills to pivot has been so instrumental in terms of like for me too. It's just been really challenging, but it's helped me really grow and like be a creative problem solver as well. So that's part of it in terms of that creativity. It's not just creativity of the artwork, it's the how do you apply that in different ways of making or doing or getting your work out there. So
one thing I wanted to reflect on, just hearing Sheldon speak about his work and sort of the opportunities that have come his way, and Anetta as well, sort of, you know, building this studio during a pandemic and having it, you know, flourish regardless. Something that I think both of you are doing and that I try to do is staying true to like what you're authentically, honestly passionate about. So Sheldon, your work absolutely has this like thread of, you know, oh, there's a Sheldon Lewis. So there's, you know, like you can absolutely recognize your work because it comes from a place that's so honest and authentic in you. And I think that just speaks so loudly. So I think regardless if you're not doing the work marketing, just you're doing the work, and same with Anetta, right? You're doing the work and building the community. So to reflect on just sort of the fact that, you know, maybe it doesn't feel like you're, because I think it's hard also to self-promote as an artist. I feel like sometimes it can be challenging to be like, okay, here's me, here's all of me, here's the stuff I do, I hope you like it. Like it can be really challenging and vulnerable to put yourself out there in that sort of position. But I find that when you're sort of creating things that you're really passionate about and really honestly connected to, that's when you connect with other people, and that's when sort of that magical thing happens with art, where other people are like, oh, I've felt that way, oh, I could sort of get that. So there's something, I think, that making a career as an artist, you know, there's so many different paths, but I think that like the root of it comes down to like being true to who you are as an artist and not trying to replicate anything that you see, but just trying to sort of be your own filter on your world, right? So
I'm curious about that too. One of the things that a lot of artists struggle with is being authentic to themselves. You know, let's say as a painter or something. But I know that artworks that I sell that are red sell way more than artworks that are blue. So I'm gonna sell more works that are red. Or like if there's something that sells more, like do you ever find that you've had to compromise your work, or you've changed it or adapt some sort of your practice?
I could quickly speak to early in my career when I first was making art and making a living that way. I very much was thinking about what I thought the market wanted more than I was thinking about what I was really passionate about. And I see a couple of years of my work where I'm like, okay, like it's fine, but it's not work that lights me up and that I get really excited about. And so part of that was being new to being an entrepreneur, and part of that was being new to being a full-time artist. And it's just, for me, it's really taken a few moments where I've learned that I just need to be myself and be honest about that, and, you know, be vulnerable and share that. And that, you know, like when you're trying to fulfill what you think people want, you're not really going to please anybody. The other thing is not trying to please everybody is a huge part of it, because the people who like my work aren't going to like, you know, like it's not for everybody, but the people who get it. And that's a really wonderful connection to make. And when you do, like, that's where the value is of a creative career, is sort of those relationships and connections that you make with people that are quite powerful and meaningful, because you're doing something that comes from your heart and soul. Yeah. So I think that's sort of, I know I've definitely fumbled with making things that I think the world would want versus what I want to make for myself. And I've always keep on finding it keeps on being reinforced that if I do what I'm most passionate and interested in, that's what's sort of going to keep building these opportunities that come your way, because you're able to be excited about it and talk about it and share your ideas, you know?
What about either you, Sheldon, or Anetta? I know Anetta, you know, you probably have a lot of people who want bowls, but you don't want to be making bowls all day.
I'm the lucky one, because pottery has also the very practical aspect. Like I can make functional stuff as well. So, and then people, they don't just want to buy, they want to also, especially in pandemic time, they also want to learn the basic how to do it. So that's beautiful, because then I can introduce not just the functional aspect of clay, but also the beauty of the material, so they can almost, it's almost like a photography of the touch, right? It's paradox is that you fire in high temperature and you freeze the moment, the touch when you're touching the clay. So that's really beautiful medium as clay.
Sheldon?
Yeah, I think, you know, to Jolene's point too, you know, early on, and I mean, when I say early on, I'm looking at like in my teenage years, you know, I was, I guess for lack of better words, at some point creating pan-Indian art. You know, it's different being an Indigenous artist. A lot of people expect you to paint these majestic spirit animals and, you know, stuff that people assume is linked to Indigenous culture. And you know, early on, I was emulating a lot of different Indigenous artists that I liked at the time, and wasn't really, the stuff that was in my style was very edgy and very heavily politically weighted in my teenage years, you know, very much in activism. And I kind of strayed away for it for a little while. But when I came back to start doing my practice more, I started using it to make political statements, started using it to create conversation around environmental issues and the political state of Indigenous peoples in Canada. And, you know, I agree, you know, once I started doing what I wanted to do, I found that it really that's when things took off. It's same thing, you know, not everybody wants a big in-your-face political piece hanging in their living room wall, but you know, at the end of the day, you know, I can still go back and paint some of that, you know, very beautiful representation of our culture as well too. And so I've dabbled back and forth between, you know, a lot of times creating maybe sometimes what the buyer is looking for, you know, especially with doing commission pieces. You know, a lot of times I ask, well, what are you looking for? You know, what are you thinking, right? And usually that'll guide, you know, the commission work. And they still trust me enough to give me free reign. But again, yeah, I think staying true to what I want to do with the art has been a big impact for me. And I think, again, it's a part of that confidence piece, being confident that, you know what, it might not reach everyone, but the ones it reaches those are the ones I want to reach anyway. So, you know, being confident in that.
I think we have a few minutes left, and I want to end on a hard-hitting question that we often receive at the gallery that has no one answer. And so I'm interested to hear how you all price your work. Do you go by fee structures such as Carfax? Do you have your own, and you don't have to say what you're pricing your artwork as, but do you compare yourself to other artists? Do you raise your prices gradually? This is one of the biggest questions that I get from new artists at the gallery. It is around pricing your work. And I'm wondering if you guys can just speak, we have a couple minutes left, just provide some sort of advice around people thinking about how to price their artwork, or any thoughts? Yeah.
I started with Artist Survival Skills. I forget who the book is written by, but it's called Artist Survival Skills. It has a little buoy on the front. I do all my originals by the square inch. It keeps it super simple for me. I'm not one for tracking how many hours I put into a work or how much the material is. I started my prices low enough to cover my costs, and I gradually increase prices every year.
Yeah,
I use the same system, like just to how much clay I use, the glazes, the firing, my time as well. So that include in the price. But of course, when I do decorative pieces, then I charge much more. And with the experience as well, like your prices are going much up, right? When you are recognized, and then you can ask for more.
All right.
yeah.
Shel-
I think I was similar too. I mean, when I started, I think at 11, it was just, I threw a roundabout number out. I was like, I don't know, $300 for that drawing, you know, and I didn't think anything, there was no thought in it, you know. And as I've grown over time, you know, I have a baseline for, you know, my logo design. You know, I'm learning now that the different aspects of illustration and, you know, you have a base price for this, and then you're allowed to revisions within that price, and after that every revision starts to add on to that price. Painting, early on when I was learning from Michelle Lockery doing the murals, we talked about, you know, square footage and X amount of dollars per square footage. And so I transferred what I had taken out of the learning to do murals, and I moved that into my paintings because I like to do larger paintings. So I say, you know, anywhere from 250 to 300 per square foot has kind of been my ballpark, you know. And just recently I was actually stopped into the Kelowna Art Gallery and was talking with Natalie, and you know, she came right out and definitely a compliment to me. She said, you know, your art's way too low priced. She's like, you're on the bottom end of the scale where your art should be. She's like, you need to bump that up drastically. And she's like, because you're worth it. And so we got to talking about things, and she's offered to put me into contact with an arts appraiser that they work with in the gallery for appraising the pieces within their collection. And so she said, you know, because we were talking about a Norval Morso piece that they acquired, and I happened to let her know that I have 2 original Norval Morrisseau sketches that the world hasn't seen yet. My uncle actually lived with Norval Morrisseau for a few years, and he's passed them on. And so she said, well, you can get them appraised here, and while you're at it, ask her about your own pricing of how to start looking at pricing your own art. She's like, she'll help you. And it was a big eye opener for me. I was pretty modesting with my pricing, 4x4 canvas going for about 4,000, and going up from there, right? Some of my murals I've made decent money. Some of them I take a lower price because I just want to do the project,
Yeah.
When I do youth projects, schools can't always afford the full price. So I say, you know what, it's for the youth, let's do it at a cheaper price. As long as I can cover some of my time, I'm having fun doing it. So, in certain instances, I do choose to really bottom out on my pricing just to make it affordable for some people. But yeah, I think I'm at that point, according to the Kelowna Gallery, where I need to really revisit how I price my work now. And so I think going forward now after this year, I'm certainly going to be bumping the price up significantly.
I know we're a couple minutes after 6. If anyone does need to leave, that's totally cool. But I wonder if we haven't even gotten to any questions that people might have yet. If maybe we'll take 1 or 2.
I'm
Does
okay
anyone
to stick around.
Yeah, are you guys good?
you
If
guys-
anyone does have to leave, we won't hold it against you. I understand we're running late. But are there any questions from any of the other participants? Feel free to shout them out, or you can put them into the chat window as well.
I had one private question that I could just elaborate on a little bit, just with regards to whether I sell mostly locally or if I sell mostly to the States, or the best ways to like pack and ship things. So I'd say a majority of my sales have been local, but because I've been more on social media, I have been having more sales to the States over the last year. Yeah, and I literally, when I ship paintings, like a work on canvas, I'm just extra cautious to make sure that nothing's going to be able to dent the canvas in transit. I use lots of bubble wrap and cardboard just to keep it extra safe. And Canada Post has been good to me over the years for shipping both within Canada and internationally. With large paintings, you might want to look at couriers. Especially if you're staying within Canada, a courier is usually going to be a better rate. Within BC and Alberta, Ace Couriers is fantastic for like large format shipping stuff. But yeah, that was just one direct question that I thought I'd answer.
Cool. Is there a platform that you sell your work on that you find works better than others, like your website versus Instagram versus like specific?
I've tried like all of them probably. I've tried Etsy. I've tried like every different sort of we made it platform kind of thing over the years. And what I've found for myself works best for me is I've got my personal website as sort of a landing site. It does have a shop. It's on WooCommerce. So it's through, I forget what platform even is, but so that works for me as sort of a centralized place that people can see everything that I have available and then inquire about commissions. I've got a history of the commission work and work that I've done. So yeah, it's interesting because there's a lot of benefits, I think, to probably Etsy and like those makers communities, but I've never been able to tap into the benefits because I think you really need to focus on being an online store if you want to do that, and that where you're sort of actually actively posting an item every day, tagging it so that people will actually see it in different collections. So it's so interesting because like a lot of it comes down to like editing how you want to spend your time. And for me, I was finding that with those sorts of platforms, I was spending too much time for the amount of sort of return I was getting from it. So I just had to learn to cut it out. I'm sure that you guys have experienced this over the years where, opportunities seem fantastic and you put a lot of work into it, but it doesn't always go somewhere. So I know for me, just having my own website that's like just sort of a landing site has made it easy for me to maintain and manage. And I don't have to be like checking other platforms to see if I've got paintings listed that are also on display somewhere, or,
So do people mostly just find you, or do you do promotion of your website?
Yeah, so I guess a lot of my connections are through social media. So I do mostly direct sales, and I work with a couple of different galleries, but a lot of the times the galleries I work with, I sort of use them as places I can send people. So I would say social media is, I would say Instagram for me has been the best for connecting with people within Canada. And then recently I've been playing on TikTok, and that's what's been connecting me with people all across America, like, and just randomly people who I've never met, have never seen my work, and say, oh, that's the painting for me, and they're ready to buy it. So it's been, social media has been a neat thing for me over the last couple of years, just learning how to get better at it and stuff.
Cool. Thanks. And our artists, if anyone has any Instagram links to your own pages, you're welcome to share them, Jolene. Or anyone else as well. Any other questions from anyone? No? I think we might leave it there then.
Thanks for having us, and thanks for talking about this. I think it's important to talk about what being an artist is, because it's so many different things and it's not a straight path. So.
I feel like we could have gone for another hour. I feel like we barely scratched the surface, but it's so great to just hear the stories of artists who are making a living in the Okanagan. So many people feel that they have to leave. And so, yeah, it's great to see some local success stories and everything. And like I said before,
my advice would be never give up. Never. Doesn't matter what kind of job you have to do on the way, never ever give up.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'd have to say the same thing. I mean, geez, I went at it for what, 35 years now, essentially, to get here. You know, I never gave up my idea that I was ever gonna not make it here. It was always in my head that that's where I'm gonna be and that's what I'm gonna do. And I say the same thing to the kids, you know, that I teach and mentor. I was like, you know, if you want to do it, then, you know, believe in yourself and you can make it happen. You know, I think confidence and just perseverance is a huge thing. You know, it's not easy to be an artist, but if it's something you love enough, you'll always find a way, and you know, people will be there to support you along the way.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, everyone. If there's any additional questions or anything that you have, you can certainly contact us at the Alternator. I'm just putting the email address in here. And either myself or Mojan will get to that. And yeah, thanks again. Our next Alternator Chat actually is next week is with the executive director for CARFAC Canada, April Britsky, and she is going to be giving a presentation about artist rights in Canada. So everything from artist fees, looking at appropriation, licensing, all those kind of practical things that you might not learn in school. And also CARFAC acts as kind of like the artist union for Canada. So if you are interested in any way about learning those things or taking those next steps and in your practice, I highly recommend it. It's free, open to the public, and there's no participation limit on that one either. So invite your friends.
Could you send us out a link to that one?
Yeah, for sure.
I've always, once I found out about CARFAC, you know, I love using them as reference for all of our young artists, sending them there.
Awesome.
And so any more information I can gain, I always pass that on and do what I can to help the younger upcoming artists who don't know where to go look. Because I had to honestly trip and stumble and learn about copyright laws and, you know, royalties and all these different things through trial and error. And so if there's the ability to point somebody in that direction, I'll certainly share that link with some of the other artists, the young artists, up and coming ones that I know.